So this is the hydraulic throwout bearing that I've converted to now. It is by Hal Racing Enterprises, product number HRE82870. And that's this little guy right here. And the reason I went with this, because what I originally had was from Speedway. And it was a larger one. And you may recognize this guy. It's like 90 or 100 bucks, and comes with some dash 4 AN fittings. You gotta convert it over. But this one is so tall that even with a 1/4 inch spacer between the transmission and the bell housing, this was still engaging nearly a 1/2 inch of clutch. Even after I bought a 1/4 inch spacer that they make for doing this type of conversion, and then I made an additional 080 or 090 spacer to go on top of that, and it was still nearly a 1/2 inch out. But that's because from the bottom of this one here to the top of that one is 2.3, call it 5 inches, whereas this one from Hal Racing is 2.605. Measuring from the face. .580. That's right. That's what I came up with yesterday. So I measured this all out last night, and this actually sits underneath here. And this is in the vehicle. It sits like that. And just these two stops here keep this from rotating. Technically you only need one, but I had a couple, so I went ahead and used those. I've locked these down really good on the faceplate there. This should get me all the clearance that I need. I actually had to add a spacer in the back. That's what this is. Now the kit comes with the whole stack of them, depending on your application, and what you can use. And each one of these is, I believe, 043, somewhere in that neighborhood, 045, and that puts me right in the spot that I need to be for this, which is somewhere in the 50 thousandths gap range, between 50 thou and 100 thou. I believe this puts me at 68 or 70 thou overall. Because what I did is I compared this number, again, from the face that touches the pressure plate clutch forks, from here to here, I got the distance, and then I measured, and I'll show you here in a second, from where this meets up from the face of the bell housing back to the clutch forks, and just subtracted the difference. And I was without the spacer, I was like at 130 thou or something like that, so 120 thou, and then I put this 40 thou spacer in, and that brings me down in between the 50 and 100 thou, somewhere in the 80, 90 thou range, whatever it is. I don't do math, or I'm not doing math right now. I just got off of work, so it's been a long day, so no mathing for me. I did that last night. As you can see, there's little numbers scribbled on every box within range here. So anyways, if you're doing a Muncie with an 11-inch clutch, with a stock flywheel, and on a small block Chevy, this little guy right here won't work. A lot of people said it would, and then I started reading in some of the comments and some of the descriptors and some of the answers from the manufacturer itself. And these are for the smaller, like 5.5 and 7-inch clutch discs that are out there for some of the, I guess, the later model stuff and some of the smaller stuff. So this one won't work. Like I said, get the Hal Racing. This one's about 135 bucks. It does, and I'll show you again when we get up in the car. It needs, I believe, a .675 stroke on a 3/4 inch bore. So I've got a 3/4 inch bore, 3/4 inch stroke slave cylinder that I'm using. I just got a cheap little eBay one. I think got it from Speedway actually. But anyways, an inexpensive one. I think it was like 30 bucks or something. So I've got about, with this one, I've got about 160, 170 bucks in it, maybe 180 with these the hoses. One of the things you will want to do is this comes with a little bleeder nipple that's right on top here. One of these guys right here, just like a brake bleeder, but you've got to reach down inside your bell housing to get to it and everything. So just got a little 12-inch -4 AN brake line, and then adapter and just put a bleeder tip on that. That way this hangs outside of my bell housing, and I just put that and bolt it up to the frame. That way I have easy access to bleed it. I don't got to try and reach down in there or stretch or stress too much. Another tip, don't get the sink. A lot of these kits will show you to use one long line that goes from the bottom, the inlet here, to your slave cylinder. Don't do that. Buy a couple of 12-inch or 10-inch or 14-inch or whatever you need to get to your slave cylinder, and just put a fitting in between here. So these are -4 female fittings, and the other one has a -4 female fitting. So I just got a male -4 coupler, and I just attach the two together. That way you can take this out without having to try and reach up, because if you're anything like me, you've got that slave cylinder buried in on the firewall underneath your master cylinder and everything else for your brakes. And it's just a real pain to try and get stuff screwed on there, especially once the motor's in. So this just makes taking your trans in or out infinitely easier. It took about an hour and a half the first time I did this, even using the 90 and stuff, just to get the other end on my slave cylinder. And like I said, I'll bring it down and I'll show you where it's at. It's a huge pain in the butt, so go with a two-piece like this. It's a couple of bucks more, but it is absolutely 100% worth it. Now I'll take you under the car and kind of show you what I was talking about for measuring from the bell housing on. Okay, so sorry about the poor angle. It's the best I can do underneath here. So what you do is you find something like this straight edge here that you can lay this level, something you can use this straight edge to lay across, and you measure from the same point that you did on the clutch, but you measure from your straight edge or your flat point here all the way to the very tip of your clutch forks or your pressure plate teeth here, and then you subtract the difference. And you want the difference. You want so what you do is you take your straight edge and you lay it across the back of your bell housing here. You measure from the same point on your straight edge that you did on the throwout bearing to the face of the transmission where it bolts onto this, and you measure from here all the way in just to the tip of your teeth on your pressure plate here, and then you subtract the difference. And what you want is you want the throwout bearing to be between 50 and 100 thou away from this side towards the transmission, away from the clutch forks. You want an air gap there, so you don't want them to touch when the clutch is fully engaged. Otherwise you're going to be riding at least partially on the clutch the whole time, and it's just not going to feel right, and it's going to burn your clutch up prematurely and everything else. So, and these are something that you have to check fairly regularly, because you may need to add shims, because as this wears out, these teeth are going to move. So you may need to add shims, you may need to take shims out eventually. But again, measure from the same point. So I measured from the inside of this little lip here to the face of my transmission, and I measured from the inside of this little lip here to the teeth, and I came out again, like I said, it was about 130 thou away. So I actually needed to add a spacer to bring the throwout bearing closer to this, so that the gap there was less than 100 thou. And I used again, it was a 045 spacer or something like that, and got me down in the somewhere halfway between 50 thou and 100 thou. And so now I'm ready to put the transmission in. So we'll get that in, we'll bolt it all up, and I'll show you what it looks like and how it shifts and stuff once we get it bled. But you can see here too, before I get completely cut out, you can actually see right here, this is the bottom end of that line that I said that I split in two, that I used to have as a single line, and now it's not. And yeah, I know I cut the back of my bell housing out. That just makes life a little bit easier for me. This is not a super high horsepower motor or anything. This is under 400 horsepower, so I cut a little bit of meat out of this, but I still have plenty of rigidity left in it, so should be fine. But yeah, put the brake point inside the your line there going up to your slave cylinder for your clutch, and just save yourself a lot of headache.